And now the whole group of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and no one claimed private ownership of any possessions, but everything they owned was held in common. With great power, the apostles gave their testimony to the resurrection of the Lord, and great grace was upon them all. There was not a needy person among them, for as many as owned lands or houses sold them and brought the proceeds of what they sold. They laid it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to each as any had need. For the word of God in us and with us and through us, thanks be to God. This part of the book of Acts sounds like a fairy tale. I mean, it would probably not even be a very interesting Disney movie. Everybody is getting along. There is so much grace. Everybody is selling their stuff. They're not having private property. They're giving to everybody, and everybody's receiving according to what they need. Kumbaya. And this verse happens over and over in the book of Acts. The book of Acts is really serious about this. And it's probably not the thing that the people at the Capitol take literally when they're thinking about what faith means. And just in case you weren't sure that this was really important, to sell everything you have, to give it to people and distribute it according to needs, which, by the way, usually this verse comes up in stewardship season. You're welcome for the bonus track. I like to tell you that, it should make everyone feel better that, the church is only talking about 1%, really. We are not probably going to do a mass Abbey project where everybody sells their house and moves here. I mean, I'm not even sure that I can manage something like that. So we're just going to, think about it. But just in case you weren't sure that the early church was actually genuinely sharing in this work of radical mutuality and this work of radical reciprocal giving and sharing, there is this other story about a guy named Ananias. Actually, there's two Ananias stories in the book of Acts. The later one, he's very brave. He talks to Paul. This one is very tricky. He and his partner decide, we're going to get in on this Christian business, and we're going to siphon money off of them, and we're going to keep our property in some offshore account. You know, a little Christian tax evasion, if you will. And guess what? They get smoted or smited, or it ends badly. It ends really badly, which is a whole other issue with the Bible. But the truth is, as much as this story seems weird and a bit foreign and probably nearly impossible for us to participate in or to communicate, it has always felt weird or strange. It has never fit in to any part or any time. These early Christians don't fit with the Roman Empire. This notion of not owning stuff, of giving what you have, of taking care of people's needs, that's not what emperors do, past and present. It doesn't fit with Christian kings and principalities. It has not been a part of our practice much. There have been monastic communities that work into this, that live into this, but these are really exceptions in our history. This doesn't fit into feudalism or capitalism. It doesn't fit into any ism that has ever existed, which is why it seems so unlikely and yet so essential. The people in the story are joining because of this real authenticity. This faith community doesn't have anything to offer anybody. They don't have power to distribute. They don't have authority to offer to anybody. They don't have land that they could parcel out for favors or loyalty. They don't have marble structures and breathtaking spaces. All they have are cup and bread and basin and towel and this deep, deep, all-in sharing. That's what they do. That's why they grow. It is essential to spiritual practice, which is why it's so hard. It's a work that makes needs sacred, and it's a work that makes gifts sacred. And this isn't just like an easy space, right? Because there's boundaries and expectations. You can't unfairly express needs that are not genuine or inauthentic or inaccurate. You cannot give inauthentically. Neither of those are okay in this community. Now, I don't know how you feel, but I feel in our context, it can be hard for us to name our needs. We like to think of ourselves as very capable and independent and so, like, we're just solid. And frankly, if you have a credit card and internet access and you go somewhere, you can probably get around without needing too much help, even to find directions or what restaurant you want to go to. When we name our needs, when we acknowledge our needs, it invites us to think about who we are and how we are in the world, and it can also lead us into relationships that are deeper and more meaningful, and they invite this reciprocal sharing. But sometimes that also requires us to name conflict in a genuine way. And our phones make it so easy for us to avoid conflict in relationships. Our structures make it easy for us to do that. We can sometimes apologize just to get it done with and not really mean it. We can sometimes gloss over or talk over or gaslight or say that's not really true when we are in a space of concern or conflict. There's a story that Kat Velo shares about conflict that I want to invite us into. Conflict resolution can be especially uncomfortable for anyone who is scared to share unrehearsed thoughts in real time. And our devices, our computers, our phones, have made it so we don't really have to. Jack Schreiner, a psychotherapist, says that when facing potential conflicts, people feel safer typing out a 5-page thesis about what their disagreement is, preemptively touching on every possible response the other person could have. This technology makes it easy to hide. You can type it out so you don't have to experience the uncertainty of the actual conversation. He said noting that this is not healthy, a coping strategy, nor does it foster trust or vulnerability and honesty that are necessary to maintain a healthy friendship, to maintain a healthy relationship. She talks about this work of listening, of being open, of staying in conversations that are hard, of hearing what someone else might say, honoring it by naming it back to make sure you heard it, and then say your experience and your thoughts. And that maybe in those moments of needing to apologize, that we don't write a letter that says, I'm sorry you feel that way. Or we don't write a letter and make it a comparison to something worse or different, like Senator Merman. That we actually say, I'm sorry. I need to work on that, or I'm sorry, I'm saddened, I'm trying. We have to practice how we show up with our needs. And I think sometimes because we don't have much practice, we don't even know what they are. And so we can have these hard feelings and these hurt feelings without even really understanding why. Because maybe we haven't really expressed what we need from someone else, or what we feel comfortable with, or how our boundaries are important. Brene Brown talks about that most wholehearted people know their boundaries. They get clear on their boundaries. This is a process. Boundaries are hard. We are not taught to have boundaries or to honor them. Not very often. To think about them. This work of being present in community requires us to know what we need and the boundaries on what we can give, what makes us well and healthy and whole, and to run into and be in space with other people requires us to hear from and to see what other people need and to acknowledge it. Bellows says, throughout human history, people have had to be constantly and cooperatively involved with each other, to hunt, to gather, to prepare food, to build shelter, to raise children, to care for the elderly, to learn, to be entertained, to overcome adversity, to celebrate. Staying alive through the ages has been a constant, humbling practice of enlisting others' help and getting involved in whatever other people are trying to accomplish too. Today, millions of people feel like they don't have anyone to lean on, not for the big stuff of life or the small things like navigating the world and making day-to-day decisions. I mean, thinking about it, if you live in a modern city and have a credit card and an internet connection, you don't really need to ask anyone for help. It's like we are in a race to prove that we can make other humans unnecessary. Reciprocal care is essential. It is a part of who we are. It can be hard for us to name what we really need. It can be hard for us to offer those gifts that we would rather hold on to, that we would rather store up, and that we'd probably rather store up because we don't actually trust that someone's going to show up when we need them. But the work of faith is exploring and unraveling and making space to know our needs, to name our needs, to hear the needs of others, and to think about the ways that we can be gifts to one another. May we have the courage. May it be so. Amen.